Hello again. Welcome back to day 3 of week 44 of year 5 of the Religious Education Initiative. We're continuing through the book of Acts. So last time we saw some of the zealous opponents of Paul among the Jews in Jerusalem make a plot to kill him. And we saw Paul's nephew hear about this and bring word about it to Paul and to the tribune who had arrested him. The tribune moved quickly and sent Paul by night under a strong escort of soldiers to the city of Caesarea on the coast, where the governor Felix was, ensuring that the plot was not able to be put into practice by removing Paul from the city where the plot had been devised. So this time we will see what St. Paul says to Felix the governor. So this is chapter 24 of Acts. 5 days later, the high priest Ananias came down with some elders and an attorney, a certain Tertullus, and they reported their case against Paul to the governor. When Paul had been summoned, Tertullus began to accuse him, saying, "Your Excellency, because of you we have long enjoyed peace, and reforms have been made for this people because of your foresight. We welcome this in every way and everywhere with utmost gratitude. But to detain you no further, I beg you to hear us briefly with your customary graciousness. We have in fact found this man a pestilent fellow, an agitator among all the Jews throughout the world, and a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes. He even tried to profane the temple, and so we seized him. By examining him yourself, you will be able to learn from him concerning everything of which we accuse him." The Jews also joined in the charge by asserting that all this was true. When the governor motioned to him to speak, Paul replied, "I cheerfully make my defense, knowing that for many years you have been a judge over this nation. As you can find out, it is not more than 12 days since I went up to worship in Jerusalem. They did not find me disputing with anyone in the temple or stirring up a crowd either in the synagogues or throughout the city. Neither can they prove to you the charge that they now bring against me. But this I admit to you, that according to the way, which they call a sect, I worship the God of our ancestors, believing everything laid down according to the law or written in the prophets. I have a hope in God, a hope that they themselves also accept, that there will be a resurrection of both the righteous and the unrighteous. Therefore I do my best always to have a clear conscience toward God and all people. Now, after some years, I came to bring alms to my nation and to offer sacrifices. While I was doing this, they found me in the temple, completing the rite of purification without any crowd or disturbance. But there were some Jews from Asia. They ought to be here before you to make an accusation if they have anything against me. Or let these men here tell what crime they had found when I stood before the council. Unless it was this one sentence that I called out while standing before them, it is about the resurrection of the dead that I am on trial before you today." But Felix, who was rather well informed about the way, adjourned the hearing with the comment, "When Lysias the tribune comes down, I will decide your case." Then he ordered the centurion to keep him in custody, but to let him have some liberty, and not to prevent any of his friends from taking care of his needs. Okay. So this is interesting. We see here effectively a trial of sorts. The first one we've actually seen, with a prosecutor, an actual attorney, not a mob or someone screaming, an attorney making a legal argument in front of the governor, and St. Paul defending himself on those charges. So it's kind of striking to see. Well, before we say anything else, because the rest of this is kind of just by the way, but that term, the way, is important because this is how Christianity is referred to, not as Christianity, not as the sect of the Nazarenes. That's how the Jews spoke of it, mocking the Lord who was called a Nazarene. But the Christians called it the way, which is to say the way of life, the way of living, the way of salvation, the way of Christ. It is the way, and they walk on that way, on the path of salvation. And we really, if we think about it, we still speak in these terms. To follow Christ is not just a belief, an opinion that we hold, a tag or a badge that we wear. It is a way of life. And this is what we find in the Orthodox faith especially and specifically. Not just an intellectual opinion, not just a loyalty to a particular sect or a particular nation, but a way of life that transcends and supersedes all of these things, that includes belief, that includes loyalties, but ultimately is the way of Christ, which is to say, the way of the cross. So, anyway, that is important, and we see it spoken of multiple times here. And then it's interesting, the accusation that is made against Paul is that he's an agitator among the Jews throughout the world, a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes, and that he tried to profane the temple, right? And then he says that if you examine him, you'll find that everything we say is true. Now that's interesting, because Paul, he's not going to agree that he's an agitator. He will agree that he is a Christian, that he follows the way, and he denies absolutely the charge that he's profaning the temple. Now, I kind of wonder, why is this Tertullus making these arguments and saying, you examine him yourself and he'll prove everything that we said to you? It may just be a matter of self-confidence. He can't come and say, we actually don't have much of an argument at all about this man. He didn't do anything wrong, and it was all just trumped up, and it was just a mob. He has to make an argument, and I think that's what he's doing. And he gets, somewhat vindicated, because at least the statement that, Paul is a Christian, Paul agrees to. Everything else Paul says, though is very sensible. And Felix, we find, is familiar with the Christians, and apparently not inclined to condemn them or to join the Jews in being angry or trying to destroy them. So he keeps Paul under house arrest, but he gives him some liberty. He allows his friends to take care of Paul. So, this is not a bad situation to be. Lysias doesn't show up, though, as we'll see next time. Paul ends up here for, I believe, a couple years, and then finally, when a new governor comes, then things move along. So, but we'll see that next time. For now, God bless you all. Have a blessed week. Happy 4th of July to any Americans here, because we'll celebrate in the course of this week, and we'll see you next week.